Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Void. We're so happy to have you. And we're looking at continuing our question series from our survey. What's next, Vince?
Hey, yeah, thank you again. And as Enrique said, welcome everyone. Episode 5, numero 5. We're going to unpack question number 2. What do you feel you need to work on to improve your leadership skills? And within that, those that participated, we funneled it into 5 different topics specifically, which not a surprise to us, which was communication and listening. But listening gravitated to the top, again, communication, patience, time management, and not being a know-it-all.
Yeah, it's so important, right? The communication, as you said, it didn't surprise us that it would come up to the top. But not being a know-it-all, what a twist to the things that, and when you ask for honesty, you get it, don't you?
Hey, yes, indeed. Yeah.
All right. So in terms of leadership and listening, it did come out throughout the survey. Question number 1 was apparent that was the top thing to speak about. And we continue to hear about listening. And the question today, what do you feel you need to do to be working on to improve your leadership skills? Listening again. So even on the part of those that are needing to learn, needing to hone their skills and sharpen their swords, listening still keeps to coming up. Why do you feel that that's a thing?
Well, as I mentioned in a previous episode, listening accounts for 45% of the communication process. Hence why I think that's like the number one low-hanging fruit to work on. And out of the whole message of a communication process, nonverbals play 80% of that, right? So knowing that, I think the tip for today to improve within the listening is to really transform the body language of listeners. And I got 6 different things I want to share with you all. So first is use your head. What I mean by that is literally if somebody's speaking to you and as you're listening, it's a great thing to nod, showing affirmation of what they're saying, right? We do it a lot in our podcast on video calls now, right? But do it in person. And guess I didn't know, but this was interesting. A head tilt is a universal gesture for giving another person an ear. Never knew that, but that's interesting. So using your head is number 1. Number 2 is open your body. If you have your hands crossed, your legs crossed, it's not going to be inviting. So unfold yourself, uncross your legs, and it's going to really help in that communication, especially listening, because you actually are opening that channel to that other person to really expose and be vulnerable too. Remove barriers. We spoke about it at one time previous to, if it's a desk, remove it. Make sure you create that bridge, because words that can be thrown, which I'll talk about in communication, can be thrown at you as either the stones or they could be actually creating bridges, right? So definitely you want to take those obstructions away. One crazy one is coffee mug. As we all leaders walk around, we have sleep deprivation. If you hold that coffee mug too close to you, it's another barrier. Small little things that, as well as a cell phone. Number 4, I got 6 of them. Activate the smile power. When you're listening and you're smiling, that just invites people to be even more open to talk. And it's a positive light for folks, So just consider that as well. But mimic the conversation. If it's a conversation that needs consolidation, you reverse that, but you want to mimic that. Lean in. I mentioned that as well. Leaning in is also helpful. It increases the folks' attention span and your attention span. And lastly, which I mentioned as a smile, mimic that expression. if that person is speaking to you and they're literally clasping their hands, well, gradually get to that same pose. Mimicking posture also helps the bridge of listening. So those are just quick 6 tips to help with the body transformation language that you should invoke as you position yourself as a great listener.
Yeah, those tips are great, especially on the person that is trying to learn and sharpen their skills as leaders. We cannot be so stuck on the same thing that we used to do time after time. We have to start to throw these things into the mix as we learn them and see how they actually come to play and the results of those things, so that we can learn more and more. And eventually the learner becomes the teacher, if they're so fortunate to, because I always caution, hey, not everybody should be striving to be a teacher. But for those that can, these are things that we pass on. I've seen those 6 tips, as you was mentioning them, rolling through my head in different scenarios that I've been in where those things have been employed, and the results of a positive outcome to a communication session, wherever it was, down the hallway, at the copier, when we used to meet there.
Yes.
And the Navy was at the scuttlebutt, or the water fountain. But I've seen those things in play and active, and the positive results of all those things. It's funny how you talk about mimic and body language. I always tend to, my sons always say, well, why do you always have your hands like this? Yeah, and I just can't explain it. It's a way of concentrating for me, that I've developed, even as an instructor, right? They teach you to keep your hands in a position where you're not going to be flailing them all over the place, because we have different types of expression, in the Hispanic culture, sort of kind of like the Italian culture. We
Right.
like to throw the hands up and out. So a way to control the conversation where it's just what's being heard, it's more cleaner, and the result could be more positive.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And to the second point, communication, the holistic part of just not only listening, there's other elements, which is, you write, you read, and you speak. And believe it or not, us as an average adult spend 70% of the day actually engage in some sort of communication. And that's heavy. So some tips in regularly understanding communication, how to improve. So first, I'll give another 6. First is a simple and concise message. It's better to stay on target, stay on message, the intent of the goal. Just interesting fact, Toy, is that President Lincoln's Gettysburg Address was only 286 words and done in less than 2 minutes. So again, short, simple, and concise is more impactful. That's first and foremost. Second is draw your audience into the conversation by asking open-ended questions, inviting input and opinion, and soliciting feedback. So you need to draw them in. It enhances and enriches that conversation and communication. Number 3, for yourself, this is a difficult one at times, is take time to respond. Really take time to draft it in your hand. What do I want to say? What impact that has on this conversation? It's not a quick draw. It's really just time to really make it resonate and think about it from other perspectives as well. 4, make sure you and the other party are understood. Great tip is paraphrase. What I heard you say was, and if you give an assignment or they have an objective, what did you understand based on our conversation? Have them paraphrase it back to you, because they might have a different thought of what they heard. So the paraphrasing, make sure everyone's understood, is great in that communication process. Maintain eye contact. Very important, especially in our fast-moving world, things beeping and making noise all around us. that is so important to be right there with the audience, either one-on-one or build that with the audience, because it builds credibility and it demonstrates you care and that you're listening as well. And last, respect the audience, right? Just don't recognize the person that you are as a leader. You know, their team input is valuable. You need them. You need their unique perspective. It's all about diversity, all about inclusion. So invite and respect those audiences, and you are going to definitely be a great listener, great communicator, and makes your job a lot easier.
I totally agree that when you started talking about the tips and you know, we're focusing on what tips to improve ourselves, because you know, it's easier to say, you know, this leader needs to do this, that, and the other, and we're talking about us now. But when you said invite, it opened up all kinds of things in my head, because few leaders take the time to invite.
Mm-hmm.
They are always mandating. They're always trying to get a job done. They're always trying to get a mission accomplished. And so sometimes we feel like we don't have time to invite, but the power of communication is in the invite. When you invite others to join into your thought process, what you're sharing, what you're communicating, what you do is that you get them to see in the clarity of what you're trying to do, and you also allow them to see where they can help in that process, and they join in. If you're going to communicate, especially as a leader, in terms of getting something done, you need the invite to be to the point where your listener joins in. You know,
Right.
people call it buy-in, right? But you know, that's a simple way of saying all that I just said. But it is when I yield my will to your purpose, you have just got 100% check on your communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just the word invite kept just playing in my head. That's where the true power of communication is. It's in that invite.
And rightfully so, Enrique. And we transition smoothly into the next word is of the tips of advice topics, which is patience. You know, how to improve patience, because within communication, within what we got going on in history nowadays, we witness leaders that are more equipped with patience and that have exercised patience in these difficult times and rise to the top. It makes you from a good to great leader. And what does it do to have great patience? These are the results of it. First, you're going to reduce stress, right? Obtain results by better decision making. You help develop and understand with empathy and compassion, and you will help to understand and appreciate the process of the growth that goes within this whole equation. So that's the benefits of this, and patience is very important, is key in all this. And here are 4 tips for that. So first, make it a day to make patience your goal for the entire day. You know, really be intentional about making that my goal. One day a week, one day every other week, patience being the goal. That effort is going to make it be mindful, make you have intention, make you have the awareness of patience. Number 2, slow down. Slow down. Take deep breaths before you act or make a move. You know, just like in communication, you know, understand that you have to take that time to really just take a pause before you talk, before you act. Slow down. The third one, I think a lot of us are guilty, is practicing delayed gratification. What that means is like, you shouldn't have that second piece of pie. You shouldn't buy that second pair of sneakers, right? Really think about, okay, do you really need this right now? Delay that gratification because it's for self, but think about the implications if you do that, because a lot of us have been guilty. Just delay it, practice delaying it. I'm gonna wait 5 minutes, I'm gonna walk around the block first, delay that. So again, first is make a day of practicing patience, slow down, and delay gratification. And last, but we all heard about, practice thinking before you speaking, right? Pause before you go out, and you don't know if you really will avoid offending or hurting somebody. So those are the 4 tips I have.
Outstanding tips. I was looking up the specific definition of patience. It says the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. What a task! What a thing! And in leadership, when we're such on timelines, everything we do is time. Everything, every project is timed. The equivalents, they equate money to time. I always say that that's a unequal a trade-off there. Money and time. Money that's made up and time there's no one's, right.
Mm-hmm.
I always say time is life. And then when you look at time as life, then you actually value time.
Mm-hmm.
But in the terms of patience, that is challenged every day because we run on a clock. And so when you talk about an attribute and patience being the key to being able to manage things without getting angry, being able to tolerate something without getting upset, it truly then becomes a great asset to a leader. Patience is really where you separate yourself from everyone else, because everybody else is feeling the pressure of time and that clock. And so patience is really evident in those leaders that have taken the extra time, as you said, right, to develop these little things throughout the day, these little tools and tips to better themselves in the area of patience. I'll tell you that it is easier said than done,
Mm-hmm.
because patience also requires you to be less, not a person, but you to be less in your mind so that you can allow someone else the opportunity to take a place where you can help them. And so patience is very key. And I was happy to see that actually come up, because it is truly an attribute that separates leaders.
Absolutely. Patience is a virtue, as they say,
Hmm.
right? And what a great segue. You talk about time, which the next one that resonated was and is time management. We all have the same 24 hours in a day,
Yes, we
right?
do.
But we have to really make the best of it. So just we struggle as with work-life balance, and we know that our teammates do as well. So you have to, as a leader, do the same. Don't just give that time for your preach it about your employees / your teammates. Also, you have to look within. So the 6 tips here is, first, make a schedule, right? And stick to it, and start improving your time management skills throughout the day, throughout the week. Look at, wake up 10, 15 minutes earlier and do this schedule, because it's important. And within that schedule, tip 2 is actually you have to prioritize. Okay, what are the things I have to do today? And those are priority A's. The B's and C's don't really have to be done today, but just target yourself. And if it has to be just 3 goals, 3 tasks, so make the schedule, prioritize. Within that, number 3 is to set some boundaries. To the fact that you only need to deal with 3, you're going to make sure you have the boundaries of taking time for yourself within this. If I have to go for a 10-minute walk, a lunch break, clear your mind, re-energize yourself, and then get back on task, because you need that. You need that for yourself to be a better leader. Number 4, account for the good distractions. It could be that walk, wow, I felt good about that. So make that part of that schedule. Account for any of those good, that phone call to your kid, phone call to your spouse. Those are good distractions. Put them in, embed them into that schedule. And the opposite of good distractions is make sure you stay away from bad distractions. If you have to pay bills and you get an alert, well, change the alert to come after a certain period of time. Don't check certain emails at a certain period of times if you know they're going to be bad distractions. You are the master of your own destiny here, right? And last one is get help. If you need help, vulnerability is courage. That's the key. If you're not good in technology, get some folks from the IT department to help. Don't try to resolve all the issues yourself. Get help, because time is of an essence. So those again are my 6 tips.
Yeah, this reminds me of a time where I was trying to mentor someone in time management.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just give you the gist of it ahead, and then give you the story. Your will is what makes or break any of these tips. If you're not willing, then nothing we say can help you. So this is the story. A young man challenged with getting to work on time. Now, this is kind of like a two-edged sword for the leader, because and I'll take it 2 ways. The first is, as the leader of that department, I addressed that leader and asked, what's important to you? Is it that they do their job, or they get here on time? Because you got to make a decision. Is it more pressing to you to bring this up because you want them here at a certain time, or do you want them to do their best work at the time that they have available? And so a lot of people are unflexible. And so as a leader, you must learn and you must understand that what requirement you put on your people is really what you want. And so when you don't get another thing, you got to understand that you're trading off. So I asked that first, and it was still unclear what they wanted, right? So I said, okay, so the leader is unclear. So what do you think the worker is going to be, right? So anyway, I worked with the teammate, and we were doing some practices. Hey, today, can you leave your house 5 minutes early? Yeah. Okay, cool. So we worked our way all the way through these weeks, because it really did take weeks upon weeks, to the point where they were getting there on time. It was like, it was 9 o'clock. They were 9 o'clock. They were there. And so we met the goal. The goal was to be there on time. But guess what? Right? You get there at 9, and then 15 minutes later, you're still booting up your computer. You're still getting all the stuff for the day, and the company department meeting started at 9. So how could you be ready? Now, I would not suggest anyone that has an hourly start of 9 o'clock for you to start with a meeting. don't do it to yourself. But everybody's got a right to choose. You run your company how you want. I'm just saying it's going to provide some more obstacles. So I asked the individual again, hey, listen, I see that you're struggling trying to start the day off. It's a little frustrating. Could you leave your house 5 minutes earlier than what you did? And they said, absolutely not. And I said, Oh, wow. Okay. So you're unwilling to leave 5 minutes earlier than what you have. They said no. I said, okay, well, that's the end of that. What else do we have? And it completely just surprised them that I would just shut the door on that and keep going to something else. And the reason why I did was because will is the only way someone will ever change. And you cannot bend someone's will without them giving it to you.
Mhm.
And so that will, that internal will we all have, is the key to adopting all these tips that we're given. And it is the key for us to adopt and overcome the obstacles that are coming our way. So I truly did. I left it at that, and that was it. That was the last time I ever mentioned it. Needless to say, uh, the individual did not make it because the desires of the leader were not being met because they were unwilling to give anymore. And that was the end of that story. But my point is, and going back to will is the determining factor of how far you get in life. I've seen people that have had all kinds of odds stacked against them, and kind of keeping it in the time management piece, and they have overcome obstacles that normally people can't. And how did they do that? They did not have any more resources. They did not have any more time. They did not have any more favors from their leaders. They had nothing else but their investment, and their investment was their will, and their will to succeed came into play, and they did. So for leaders trying to adopt all these tips that we're giving you, it's imperative that you apply your will if you want to see the results that you want.
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, you definitely have to have the will interweaved in everything we do as a leader, and really embrace all the different type of ways to learn and be better at leading. And hence why these tips are here, and hence why we are in service to try to address the voids in your leadership, right? So thank you for that, Enrique. The last tip that we came about to improve is really all about your state. It's if you're a know-it-all, you're not in a business to be a great leader,
Oh
right?
my, yeah.
You have to know as a leader you're in service for others and you work for them. Your best advice is to surround yourself with smarter people than you. What value you will bring if you tell your group of folks, listen, I don't know everything and I need your help to get to this objective to make this task work. How much more you think they're going to lean into you? Think about that. So, and I say that because you want to prioritize the mentality over the individual win. Not about me, it's about them.
Yep.
If you need to take a walk at times, do so. One, prioritize the team mentality over individual wins. Number two, know that your words are important, but what is your tone telling folks? Like folks, oh yeah, I have an open door policy and I say this and I say that, but your tone might say something totally different. And if it does, you have to be proactively apologetic when you don't hit that mark. Have others chime in. Don't be like, do you have any questions? Make it more inviting, because
That
your
scared
tone,
me.
yeah, right. You sometimes have to sit on your urges. The tone is important. So keep note, not just I said it to them, I asked them, but no, how did you ask them?
Mhm.
Sit on your urges, which drives into the humility and the respect as the utmost glue to this whole thing. And there's a great saying out there that says, people don't care how much you know. They want to know how much you care. I think that resonates so much for everyone. And last tip is really what we talked about earlier, is your body language and listening are key to really be open and not be a know-it-all. Because if you're there with a certain pose, I'm the head honcho and these are my pupils, then you're not going to get anywhere. If you have it recorded or you can see yourself in a mirror and you say, wow, I can't believe I was that way. And if you don't even see it, someone needs to really pull you aside so you can thank them and then change it, right? So those are the 4 tips I have of the know-it-all component.
Yeah, know it all. My goodness, it's one of the most dangerous places to be. And I reflect back to my military career, and I'm sure that you can remember. We take exams to prove our worthiness at the next level. What does that exam really try to prove? That you know the material that you're charged with knowing, right? So it's funny because we teach people to know it all, but then when they act like they know it all, then we frown upon it because that's what the exams are for. You showing me that you knew the entirety of the right the exam. So, oh, this exam will cover chapters 1 through 10. Are you kidding me? What do you mean, chapter 1 through 10? I can give you chapter 1 and 2. I fell asleep for the other. We actually test to a know-it-all situation, and so we prime people to assimilate and to adopt that kind of feeling throughout their career, throughout their schooling, through only those that know more than others can get to the next level. And then we hit them with leadership. And in leadership, we say, no, you can't be like that. No. Mm-hmm. So where is the transition? There is none. There is none, because I could take a manager and there's a void in my structure, and I need somebody who's the one that knows the system the best. And then we put them in the leadership position. Mm-hmm. And then they continue to know it all and act like it, right? So we have to do a better job in terms of knowing it all and what we desire from the leaders, and start to bring them along. Those programs are highly absent in corporate. I don't know how many have you seen, but the Navy adopted what we call CPO 365. The CPO is Chief Petty Officer, and then 365 is 365 days a year. If you want to be a Chief Petty Officer, you have to learn how to be that 365 days. We're not just going to throw you into it. So there's a program made to transition people from the know-it-all mentality to actually knowing it all, but not without saying, without ever saying it. And not only not saying it, but allowing others to get to the point where they feel that they are proficient, they are experts in what they're saying, and you bring them along. And I know some companies do have a mentorship program where they transition folks from the management side, where they're running day to day and have to know it all. They're the technicians, to the leaders, where now you're managing a different aspect. You're leading people. You're in a different realm. It's a different realm, and they help them transition well. But for folks that don't have the benefit of those programs, know it all is a condition that has already been set throughout our lives. And so it's hard to break out of that, especially if you're thrown into a leadership position. But it's possible, right? We all have gotten there. I know I came from a proving I knew it all conditioning, but I knew that I did not know all about life. So I was able to humble myself into the position of, hey, I know I don't know it all. I may know everything there may be about turning, righty tighty. I know you turn right. What about if they made the bolt different, right? So I still don't know it all in terms of that. But you have to come to that realization for you to understand that it really takes humility to get off of the know-it-all syndrome or conditioning, and what we like to see in leaders, which is, hey, we know that you're probably in leadership because you know it all, but you don't have to tell us every day.
Absolutely, totally agree. It's important. Everything Enrique mentioned, and totally all the tips we talked about today. Again, today we talked about ways to work on improving your leadership skills, which were dealt. We talked about listening. We talked about communication, having patience, time management, and of course, not being a know-it-all, and learning to transition from that to actually a servant leader. um, as we continue going down this beautiful journey, we're here every Wednesday at in the morning. We launch this great episodes of the Leadership Void podcast. If you have any questions, would like us to address any leadership topics, please email us at theleadershipvoid@gmail.com. And for those that have companies that would like us to sponsor during our podcast, please also email us. Send us your paraphernalia, your materials, your coffee mug, your t-shirts. We're proudly talk about you and have a segment to really share what you're doing within within the corporation and within the community as well. Before I finish, I'd like to turn it over to Enrique to say a few words too.
Yes, look, I am so excited about these episodes. What we're talking about is so integral in what or important to what we would like leaders to become. And this particular question is more about us, right? It's what we want to do, what we want to improve to become better leaders. And so these tips, these commentaries, these discussions are truly from a standpoint that we want you to have all that you need. And I always go back to the will, but your will has to be there. And we will love our comments, our discussions, the tips that are being thrown to you by Vince to meet your will. This is where you get to your chance outside, in your own private setting, to think about what marries, and what's not there, right? That's why this podcast is called The Leadership Void. What voids do you have that these tips and advices and all the things that we're talking about, what is going to fill those areas that and you're recognizing in your own leadership that needs attention? Talk about attention and the podcast and the excitement. One of the features that we have is the guest speaker. Now, last week we had with us Professor Huertas from Barry University. It was a great episode, and we're gonna split the guests with the questions and bring those to you weekly. And this next week we have Ken Lundy from he's a Navy veteran, and he's the founder and executive director of Future Pharaohs Mentoring Program. And we're so excited to have Ken. We know him from the veteran scene here in Central Florida, and I'm sure he's going to bring in some great commentary, some great discussion, and we can't wait to have you with us next week.
Exactly. So you'll tune in and hopefully you'll enjoy us this Wednesday, the 22nd. But next Wednesday, the 29th, please tune in and see and hear what Ket Lundy has to bring to the table, his journey, his mentoring program, and much more. And we thank you for your time. We'll see you next week.